Okay, here's your Chapter 9 review of all of the things that we have been talking about with decimals, fractions. So your first section is going to be your vocabulary. As you can see in your box, you have how many words? 4. How many do you have to fill in?
3.
Only 3, so one of them will not be used. Next section says to write the fraction and the decimal shown by the model. So in the first one, you're writing fraction. Second one, you're writing decimal. Next section, write the number as hundredths in fraction form and decimal form. So how many different ways? 2. So something you need to read on, especially on your test if it tells you to do 2 things, you need to make sure you're doing 2 things. So you're writing it in hundreds and 2 forms. Then we're finding the sum. Remember that you cannot add tenths, and hundredths together until you change one of them to what? Hundredths. So you need to make sure that you're changing and getting a common denominator to do so. In the last section there, you're going to compare just like you did yesterday. Tell me which one of the decimals is going to be less than, greater than, or equal to each other. Questions on that page? Your next 2 pages are your test prep. If you need to work out things, you have plenty of room on the side. So please make sure you're keeping it over there. Do not erase whatever you do for work. Let's go to the constructed response page, please. This is where you will see some of the problem-solving problems on your test. Let's read number 22. There is and 5/10 of a liter of pineapple juice in another container. If Mrs. Morales combines the 2 juices, how much orange pineapple juice will she have? Explain how you found your answer. So your question is, if Mrs. Morales combines the 2 juices, so what does that word combines tell you? You're going to put them together, which means what kind of expression am I going to be using? Addition, because you're going to put them together. Okay, then you're using 30 hundredths of orange juice and 5/10 of pineapple juice. And all of this is measured in, look at what it's measured in, liters. That's what you're measuring it in. So your container is measuring in liters. All right, so who thinks they know what the steps are that we need to take in order to come up with our answer? Cheyenne, what do you think we're going to start with first? So she wants to change the 5/10 into hundredths, so she knows that 5/10 is the same thing as 50 hundredths, because she knows she's going to do the multiplication 10 times 10 and 5 times 10. So now that she gets 50 100ths, what's she going to do with the 30 100ths? You're going to add them. So you're going to put it over here. And if you wanted to do it going sideways, that's fine too. Just make sure you have it on there. So 50 100ths plus the 30 100ths is going to give you what? 80 100ths. You could also do it in tenths, and it's the same thing as putting this in simplified form, correct? Yes. So what would 80 100ths be if I was to put it in tenths? 8/10. So you could say, or 8/10. Going to be there both. Okay. So we had to multiply the numerator and the denominator of 5/10 by 10. That was the first step we took, right? Changing 5/10 to 50 hundredths. Then add the 2 fractions. So you found an equivalent fraction for 5/10 in hundredths since the other one was in hundredths. So you're multiplying the numerator and the denominator of 5/10 by 10, and then adding the two fractions. Did you write both of those steps down? Hope so. Then add the two fractions. Now this next question is going to use some information from the first one. It says write the amount of orange pineapple juice as a decimal. So you got it in the form of a fraction. And now they want you to put it as a decimal. So how am I going to put 80/100ths as a decimal? Who can tell me how to do that? See? Okay, so if I have the or, should I probably do it in decimal form also? Okay, and who can tell me the 8/10 in a decimal? Ian? 0.8. So we need to make sure if we have more than one, we do both of them down here. So 80/100ths will be written as a decimal with 0.80, and 8/10 will be 0.8. All right, 24 has 3 parts. So we need to make sure we know what we're using for all 3 parts. Let's read. Luke lives 4/10 kilometers from a skating rink. Mark lives 2,500 kilometers from the skating rink. That's just your background information, right? Think you're probably going to use that? Let's read A. Who lives closer to the skating rink? So there's your first question here. So what numbers am I going to have to use to get my answer? Or what numbers am I using here? 4/10 and 2,500ths. So it's asking us who lives closer to the skating rink. So am I using what I did yesterday? Comparing them? Okay, so if I was to write them, since I have plenty of room over here, we're going to put 0.4 here and 0.25 below it so you can see how it is going to line up. This is like the place value chart that you did yesterday. I'm just writing it here so that we can see. So am I using the zeros to compare? Am I using the 4 and the 2? So this is the place that I'm comparing. So what can you tell me about those? Brian? So 4/10 is greater than 2/10. Yes? So that means that we're going to write over here 4/10 is greater than the 2,500ths. Is everybody with me there? Since 4 is greater than 2. That's the column that we use, right? So if we know that 4 is greater than 2 and the 4/10 is greater than the 2,500ths, who lives closer? And Mark does. So Mark is our answer to the question. Since the 4/10 is greater, that's the greater distance away from the skating rink. So we want the one who lives closer to the skating rink. Does that make sense? Okay, so something to think about there. So you could say Mark lives closer. That would be fine there. You could say something along the lines of, because 2,500ths is farther away, that would make Mark live closer. But you get the idea of what we were doing using our place value. Let's look at B. How can you write each distance as a fraction? So which distances are they talking about? Same ones? Okay, so I'm going to write this one here as a fraction, and then I'm going to write this one as a fraction. Who can tell me what fraction I'm going to write for 4/10? Chase, what's it going to look like? into a fraction?
I know. 25.
I'm doing 4/10 first because it's listed first. So what am I going to turn it into as a fraction? Tell me how I'm going to write it.
4/10.
Okay, so 4, then what do I have?
Over 10.
Over 10. Or you could say fraction bar, which is what that symbol is actually, right? How am I writing the next one, which would be 25 hundredths? Notice that I'm putting an equal sign in here so we can see what they look like in decimal form, as well as your fraction form. Aiden, what am I writing on this one?
I'm writing 25 fraction bar 100.
So 25 fraction bar 100. Now, guys, when you say it, should those two match? Some of you, when you were doing some of your pages and you were to write the fraction in the decimal form, your fraction and your decimal form weren't matching. Well, if they're supposed to be the same amount, why are they not matching? So if you do not have matching fractions with decimals, one of your answers is probably wrong. Think about that when you're writing those down, especially on that first page where you have to do multiple things. C. Luke is walking to the skating rink to pick up a practice schedule. Then he is walking to Mark's house. Will he walk more than a kilometer or less than a kilometer? And explain. We kind of did, but we'll go back to it in just a second. We could just tell us that 25 is a hundred and 4 is in tenths. So I'm not too worried about that. So here's your question. Will he walk more than a kilometer or less than a kilometer? Now you need to go back and read the beginning of this C to make sure you understand exactly where he's going. So let's read it one more time. Luke is walking to the skating rink to pick up a practice schedule. Got that? Then he is walking to Mark's house. So let's think about that for a second. He's walking to pick up the practice schedule at the skating rink. Who is?
Luke.
So which one of these numbers up here am I using for it?
4/10.
The 4/10. Then it says he's walking to Mark's house. So what am I doing from there? Adding the 25 hundredths, right? So I'm still using both numbers, it's just in a different way. Okay? So you tell me that you need to add that. Yeah? So let's put it over here. If you have 0.4 or 4/10, and you're wanting to add it to the 25 hundredths. Now, can I write it a different way in order to do this? Do I have to write it in decimals? What's easiest to figure? Fractions. So it might not be a bad idea to put your 4/10 like this, and your 25 hundredths like this. Yes. So remember, when I'm trying to find my common denominator, I'm going to have to multiply 10 by 10. So that means 4 is going to have to be multiplied by 10. So that means this is going to be equal to what? 40 hundredths. And you're still keeping the 25 hundredths from down here. Great. So your question, once I add this, I get 65 hundredths. So that's your total. Now it says, will he walk more than a kilometer or less than a kilometer? So look at your answer. It's less, isn't it? Because it's not over 100, correct? So your first part is going to be less than. And you're going to say that 4/10 fraction is fine, plus your 25 hundredths is equal to 65 hundredths, which is what we found, right? We don't have to tell them how we found it if you have your work over here, okay? So we're just going to add them together. We got 65 hundredths. And 65 hundredths is less than 1 kilometer.